Celeste creator Maddy Thorson has written a blog. So I don't know if you knew much about this. Like I knew prior to this blog that Maddie, had come out as trans. So this was like last year, I think, from memory. Just because it's someone that I follow on Twitter, and she's written a blog just around that. Not only is she trans, but that the protagonist in Celeste, which is one of the indie darlings of the last couple of years, is also trans, which is quite interesting. Just and it's a really really interesting article. We'll link it in the show notes and on the YouTube clip as well. But yeah, it was really fascinating to read about her journey of sort of just starting the game, not having this realization about herself or the protagonist of the game, and then it wasn't really until the game was completely finished, like with the DLC, that she sort of started to realize, and then she sort of started telling her friends and coming out as trans, and then also to the wider community. So yeah, it's just really kind of a fascinating article. No negative backlash that I can see, thank God. But it's also just interesting to me how a creator can create something that is a bit of a manifestation of their own subconscious without realizing, and then turns out that they've made an assessment about some of the identity of a protagonist without them even knowing themselves that they kind of felt it was like that.
Yeah, this is a great article to read, and
Mm.
it's very personal.
Oh,
Really
super personal. Yeah.
huge credit to Maddie for laying it out there. And we know that whenever there's been backlash to, obviously we know that J.K. Rowling has very strong thoughts on the whole concept of gender identity and everything, but we know that when she came out and started to say, "Oh, Dumbledore was gay," blah blah blah. You had all this backlash of people saying, "Wait, don't go back in to your work and your art and try to add these things in." So I'm really glad that this has been that people haven't taken it that way. That it's people have understood that this is actually it. Yeah, as you said, it's almost kind of a manifestation. Throughout the development to then realize,
Mm.
okay, this is why I was so confused at the time. It's and why why these things are so important is because it was so personal. So I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I know that the community had it's been a long thing where they've been talking about wanting clarity on this, and they didn't outright come out and say it in the DLC that they added, and I think that's actually really great because to me that would almost be like, well, we need to say this because there's people are expecting it. No, like
Yeah.
the fact that obviously Maddie said this in the blog, which I think is good, but to go out there and put it in a piece of text in the game would have probably felt very tokenistic and wouldn't have fit probably the game as well. So I think
Mm.
it's really really good, and I really like the quote that Maddie put in the article, which is, they didn't want it to be like Samus removing the helmet at the end of Metroid to reveal that, surprise, you were a trans woman all along. I think that's a really great line because it's, yeah, as I said, it's obviously important to the game, but yeah, like I remember back when they put out new Baldur's Gate DLC, well after the original Baldur's Gate came out, and people were some corners of the internet. We know the types were very were harking about forced diversity, blah blah blah. And I think one of the issues was that you meet one of the characters in there, and one of the first things they say in the first dialogue is they start talking about that they're that they're trans, and so I think that the way they did it with Celeste was really great. And by the way, I don't agree with that at all. It was just kind of just remember it. This kind of made me think about that when you start having people kind of say, "Oh, look, why is that the first thing someone mentions?" But I think
Mm.
this is really, really good. That and this article, as I said, it's very personal. And having played through, oh my god, tell me why that's it. I can't think of any game titles this week. Tell me why, which had a trans protagonist, and gender identity was very central to the story and the themes. I think it's really good. It's, representation is one of the strongest form of, of helping people come to grips with, the fact that they're going through these troubles in life. Because while I can't speak firsthand, I imagine it is very tough to go through and have to, come out and things like that. So
Mm.
it's really good to have people in art and media and characters and representations that represent you. I think it's really important.
Mm. Yeah, and I should actually correct myself, because I was sort of referring to Maddie as she, whereas they're actually non-binary, so that's more of a they them type of thing. Which, it's kind of like this whole thing. It's like getting accustomed to the language as well, and just accommodating people, and getting to feel okay with themselves. I mean, I don't have that much experience. Like, the one thing, and I don't think we've actually spoken about this, but my aunt was like, and I'll frame this in a way that actually, I don't know how to say this in a way that's not offensive. Like, so my uncle came out as trans, so now it's my aunt, like a few years ago. And I remember talking to her, just about the whole thing. So she's like, what would she be? Like almost 70, right? And it was really actually super fascinating to me, just going, hey, like, how long did you feel like this? Like, I asked so many stupid questions, but I feel like how you get to learn about these things otherwise. And then she's just straight up like, hey, I always felt like this, but there was kind of like no language for that back then. Like, that just wasn't something that was in the realm of possibility or just reality. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't have the words for what you are and, what's driving you. So like, personally, it was like super eye-opening to me. Like, I've always been, and I think we're pretty similar in this way, but I won't speak for you, but I've always been one of those people that sort of like, look, it doesn't affect me or it doesn't impact me, and it means a lot to that person. So why would I have a strong view almost one way or the other? It's like, I feel like these are genuinely held views that someone's had. So, I'll be behind them and support them in what they want to do and, what makes them feel comfortable. Because I think it's extremely reasonable, the requests that people have of just sort of going, hey, this is who I am and this is how I identify myself. It's like, okay, like, it doesn't bother me, and, that's good for you. And then, to be honest, I don't think I would be brave enough to be able to do that, even if I felt like that. I think I'd just be one of those people that just, wouldn't feel comfortable like going out to everyone, and I really hope that changes with time.
Yeah.
And also, but yeah, like, outside of that, haven't had much experience.
Yeah. And also just, the actual process of transitioning, while it's obviously very different for different people, is, by all accounts, really tough. Not just on the mental side, but the physical side as well. And it's, I have so much respect for people that are able to go through that and obviously come out, on to everyone else about it. It's would be so tough. There's just think about, so for some people they'd probably feel like it's the biggest secret that they can't tell anyone, and just think about the biggest secret you've got, that you don't want to tell anyone. Like, just to tell people that would be super tough. So I think this is a fantastic blog article, and I really look forward to the. Not sure if they're working on a new game at the moment. You'd hope so. So I'm really looking forward to the next game. I still got to play through Celeste, so I think this is probably a good a good thing to get me onto that and stop watching GDQ runs instead. So.
Yeah, and it's a part of Xbox Game Pass, getting back to gaming. And, like, I think given the history of, like, I don't even know what to call it now, because they kind of have a studio, and the studio's name was Matt Makes Games, and they want to change the name. I don't know what they're going to change the name to, but they don't really make sequels, that crew of people. Like, it's quite an interesting and eclectic crew of people. It's like some Brazilians and Canadians and all over the place. So they make fantastic games. So yeah, and like, one thing I just wanted to touch on before we move on was just, to me, like, I think Celeste itself and just this story sort of, helps elevate gaming to a higher art form than I think what a lot of people think of it as, in terms of, hey, it can't get to the level of something like movies or books. I think, the fact that the game itself is a bit of a metaphor for, climbing up something, climbing up a mountain, getting through something, persevering. And then, you hear this story about its own creator kind of, replicating that, art sort of imitating life and life imitating art. I think it's just like something that's unique to games, in this way of the way it's been expressed. And, I hope, and I so far see that, everyone supports them. And, I think it's just, yeah, it's a must read article if you're sort of, into this more artsy fartsy style stuff in gaming. I think it's well worth reading.
We need more games like Celeste, and we need more stories like
Yes.
Maddy's.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well said. All right. Well, this is impossible to segue. But, another thing that really caught my eye this week